Same. Okay.
Taji Chestnut, he, him, co-chair Pset. Thank you all for being here tonight.
Elliot Young, he, him, co-chair of PCCEP, and pass it to Anne.
Hi, everyone. Ann Campbell, she, her. I am on the steering committee as the secretary of PCCEP, and I'm also on the settlement and policy subcommittee. Thanks for being here tonight.
Claudia.
Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Claudia. I'm the project assistant for PCCEP. Thanks for being with us this evening.
And Amy.
Amy Anderson here. I'm mobile, so I'm not putting on the video. Sorry, guys. I'm walking.
Okay, cool. Vadim.
Hi, everybody. Vadim Azursky, PCCEP member. Good to be here.
And Theo.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I'm eating. My name's Theo Lada. I'm a PCCEP staff member. It's nice to see you all here.
And since we just have a few other folks, maybe we could introduce them as well. So Barb.
Hi, my name is Barb Rainish, and I am a citizen, consumer interested party.
Thank you, Barb. Jared.
Hi there, Jared Hager, he, him pronouns. Here in my role as a monitor of the settlement agreement. I'm with the Department of Justice. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jared. D-Dub.
Hi, this is Dana McCauley. I'm the Deputy Director of IPR.
Okay, good to have you with us, Dana. Leah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leah Drebin, community member interested in this work with some experience in what we're talking about.
Thanks for joining us, Leah. And Mary Claire.
Good evening, Mary Claire Buckley, she, her, and I work at the Portland Police Bureau.
Okay, so let me pass it back to Taji, who has a moment for us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Elliot. Well, following, this is a little bit past, but I think it's important in the larger conversation of police brutality to acknowledge the killing of Brianna Taylor as well in this conversation. Both of their deaths, George Floyd and Brianna Taylor, led to the culmination of the summer protests last year and re-sparked interest, I would say globally, in conversations of public safety, and that have brought all of us to this room today in one way or another. And also acknowledging the historical context of Black women being erased or forgotten in the conversation about police brutality and the effects it has on Black women is significant. And the Say Her Name campaign was predicated on that idea that Black women's voices should be heard and that their experiences and their stories are as important as Black men and as other folks as well. And Brianna Taylor was unfortunately murdered with a no search warrant in her house, if you're unfamiliar with her story, and was killed by 3 officers who went into the house in the middle of the night and killed her without her knowing. Or excuse me, they shot warning shots and then subsequently killed her. And that is obviously a horrendous incident that must be acknowledged. And like I said, with the former, recognition of George Floyd, it's not just about acknowledgement, it's about remembrance, and it's about carrying on their legacy and their future for the betterment of each of our own communities. So just want to acknowledge that, and I'm excited to be here with you all tonight, and let's get working on this important stuff.
Thanks, Taji. So we've got a full agenda, and some of these items I think are going to be quicker than other items. So the first agenda item is Core Patrol Services, to give an update. So as you all know, we passed the recommendations at our last full board meeting. And since then, Taji and I have been trying to get in touch with Sam Diaz, who is the liaison for the Core Patrol work in the mayor's office. And we have, after multiple emails, phone calls, text messages, not been able to have a conversation about follow-up steps. The original plan, which we announced to the community in many public forums, included going to the city council in the first part of June. Now, clearly, since no meeting has been scheduled, that's not going to happen. I'm a little frustrated that our liaison at the city is missing in action, and I'm not sure what to do, except that I basically, for myself, had a deadline of today, which is 2 weeks and multiple attempts to reach Sam, and believe that the steering committee, or would like to propose that the steering committee draft a letter expressing our concern of not getting support on or follow through on this important piece of work, and sending it to the city, and as well as to the COCL and the DOJ and the city attorney. In an earlier meeting today, the city attorney was made aware of this lack of contact and was going to try to reach out, but that's my proposal. So are there—
I would also just add on top of that, that I think this situation has bubbled to such a gravity, certainly because the other instances in which PCCEP interacts with the city most often is our recommendations and our town halls, which by all means have a lot of autonomy, have a lot of power on the city's behalf in their response to it. And I think this new Core Patrol is a very clear indication that when a situation that we are proposing large reforms approaches the city, it seems as if there is a recoil, and it does not look good on the city's behalf. And it also does not make PCCEP and the community feel very good to see as the reaction from the city to our proposed recommendations. So I think it's a very serious issue that, despite hearing moderately back from Sam, it does not seem like we are getting the responses we were getting literally just a week prior, and the urgency that he was carrying with this issue a week prior. And now that they've passed, the work that's supposed to happen now is being stalled. And that's a problem, and it could be indicative of a larger problem if it's not addressed soon. So don't know if anyone from the community or PCCEP or staff have any questions or thoughts on that. We just wanted to make it aware to y'all, and we can now discuss a potential letter. Theo, do you have a question, thoughts?
Yeah, I just got a text from Sam.
So now the city's not wanting to move forward on implementation plans.
Amy, you're off mute.
Right.
Yeah, were you?
Sorry,
were you meaning to talk?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Theo was.
Sorry, you said, do I have any questions? And I'm on the bus and I'm limited. So I'm trying to get this out as quick as possible. Did you guys, was there some indication that implementation was going to happen right away?
Not implementation. There was a clear indication that we were supposed to set up next steps to go before city council, to meet with city council staffers. And as Taji was saying, right before the 25th, we were meeting regularly and in constant contact with Sam since the 25th. Literally sent, dozens or, many emails, phone calls, text messages, and have not heard anything back about what those next steps would be. No meeting set up. And so it's not that we know what's going on, there's just a lack of response. Anne, and then Vadim.
I was just wondering, I wanted to ask a question for all of us. A brief synopsis would be that we were asked to pursue this work by the mayor's office. Is that correct, or am I incorrect in that?
Yeah, this work was part of a 19-point, part of the 19-point
Yes,
plan.
it was part of the
So
mayor's
it has the
19-point
most, public coverage in that sense.
Okay, yeah, so they asked us to do this work and then they're not getting back.
Vadim?
Oh, so kind of follow up on what Ann was saying. Normally our recommendations go to the mayor, and this 19-point plan seems to be within the mayor's office. Why don't we just send it to the mayor as a recommendation like all our other recommendations instead of asking for a hearing before city council?
Because from the beginning of this process, Sam Diaz told us that this was of the level that it would go before city council. That was always the plan. It was what was announced to the public. And I think what we should do is send the recommendation. I was hoping that this would, that Sam would have gotten back to us, but I think we should send the recommendation to all the city council members, immediately, but then continue to try to work to present it to all of city council, because unlike some of our other recommendations, this one would require the approval of the majority of the city council. So it's not something that the mayor himself could approve. It's just the nature of the kind of recommendation.
So are you asking for a vote by city council agreeing with everything that's been recommended, or just a presentation saying here's what our recommendations are, or what's the end goal here?
Yeah, well, that's what we were hoping to have a meeting to discuss with Sam, and we had talked about realizing that they probably wouldn't be able to vote on it. It's not written in the language of an ordinance, so they would vote on it and it would be implemented and they would allocate, money to these things, but that it could either be one idea is presented as a report or a resolution that sets out a broad framework that people could vote on and then would need to be, implemented down the line in the same way that the new accountability body was voted on by the public, and then the implementation is going to take several years. So there was no expectation that it's going to be voted upon and the next day it would be implemented.
But that we also said that we would have, there was two ideas. One was to have it, well, there was a lot of different ideas shopped around, but there was really just the plan to have next step meetings, no matter what, about whether and how we would want it to go to city council. So it was going to be, we just never came to a conclusion on what we would do, right? Anyway, so that's just sort of where we're at, I believe.
Theo?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to relay the text that I got from Sam. Sam was on vacation last week, the end of last week and the beginning of this week, but he wanted to let the PCCEP know. I think he's going to be joining us soon. He said he's wrapping up another meeting, but they are dealing with a lot of staffing changes, as a lot of PCCEP members know, and they're in the midst of scheduling a meeting with the PCCEP and the mayor's chief of staff, Bobby Lee, as soon as possible. And they'd like PCCEP to be a part of the briefing. So that's just the text that I got.
Okay, well, if Sam joins us and we could have that meeting, then that obviates the problem and we could move on to the work. So let's just wait to see if Sam shows up and we could get a meeting on the books, and hopefully we could all move forward from this sort of pause in communications. Okay, so let's move on. I think the next item was the Truth and Reconciliation. So I'll pass it over to Taji.
And unless you have anything else prepared, I was really just going to give it the shout out I think it needs and post the flyer in the chat, letting people know the Truth and Reconciliation Planning Committee has been meeting and planning the webinars for the month of June that start tomorrow. And that will go on until the 30th of June every Wednesday. And they're of course all free and all we'll try to make sure people who go to the previous ones get links to everything else, but we'll post the links of that in the chat for anyone interested. The whole focus of this will be to increase the awareness of truth and reconciliation work and build momentum in the community around this work, and trying to make it something that is more community driven than just PCCEP driven. And so once we can rally the community around it, we can hopefully bring it to City Council with some clear where we are at as a city and where we could go in the truth-telling process. And I believe the mayor will be at our meeting tomorrow for that.
Yes, the mayor is going to be at our meeting tomorrow to offer some words at the beginning. This webinar was, this truth and reconciliation work was, as many of our PCCEP members will remember, was added to a recommendation that the mayor signed this past fall. He's asked PCCEP to form a subcommittee to look at what that could look like for Portland. And out of our webinars, we are at the last one going to be putting together a proposal to share with the city as to what could be the next steps. And you do want to register for it, sign up so you can participate. As Taji said, it's free. Barb, did you have a question?
I wouldn't be me without one, Anne. So are they going to be recorded and available on the PCCEP site for people who missed them? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. Taji, are we providing those?
Not to the PCCEP website. It'll definitely be on the YouTube channel, and they'll definitely be recorded. They just for sure.
Okay,
yeah. If that's what you meant, then absolutely, yeah. We'll make sure they're available, and we'll hopefully send an email when all of them are done, and sort of a compiled list so people can get to them easily.
I wanted to say that this was a collaboration between Portland State, a university, and what is the organization? The center in Aunties.
Yeah, the Mary Hawk Center for Reconciliation, based out of, I believe, DC. But with those two folks we've been mentioning, Eduardo and Auntie Pentacon, and they are stationed out of there. And I believe some of their colleagues might be joining some of the webinars as well, adding their expertise. So it should be really good. Okay. Is there any other questions about that? I'm trying to get it in the chat right now. I just have to stop when I was answering that question. So I'll do that right now. But besides that, we can probably go on to the town hall. You're muted, by the way. Elliot, you muted.
This item emerged because I was invited to a Gray Panthers meeting. Gray Panthers is a bunch of like senior activist types in Portland, and at that meeting, Sharon Myron, who's one of the county commissioners, was there, and she had been on COAB, and so we started talking about PCCEP COAB, and she was interested in meeting with some PCCEP members, so I invited the folks on the steering committee, and Anne and I had a brief chat with her. And what was interesting about that conversation was something we've talked about as part of Core Patrol, which is the lack of coordination between the city and the county over issues related, especially to mental health. And she was in particular concerned that some of this work had gone on. They had done this mapping exercise to try to show sort of the different resources that existed out there, but then there was no follow through with working with that to try to have people work together. So one idea that emerged out of that conversation was for PCCEP to host a conversation that would include people who work in the city, like Portland Street Response, BOEC, along with representatives from county organizations like Project Respond and some of the other county groups that are working on this, to review the work that's already really been done to map out sort of what exists in the community and to start getting a conversation going, because apparently there isn't much of a conversation between county and city. And so this item is really about whether we think that that's a good idea. Definitely, I wanted to have Amy and Barb and folks from behavioral health involved in this, because this is so much related to that issue, but wanted to get a read of this body about whether that's a good idea, one, and then number two, whether it makes sense to include it in our general body meeting, next general body meeting, or have a separate town hall. So I see a couple of hands, Amy and then Barb.
Yeah, I'm going to try to take a moment before the bus moves. Elliot, your idea was something that, number one, I'm filling out a grant to do as well. Number two, I emailed the commissioner last week about doing what I call a call out, providing services that we don't know anything about. So I'm like 2 weeks already ahead of your idea. Okay, I just want you to know this is deep on my heart, that we cannot do a town hall. I do not want this to be an education session. I need this to be an info session. So if you call it a town hall, we won't get the results you're looking for. You got to trust me on this one.
Okay, could you explain the difference between an info session and an education
town
session?
Hall. I just got done being on.
I think we lost you, Amy. Okay, let's see if Amy, maybe we lost her connection. But, you know, I'm agnostic on the form that this takes, info session. Could you hear me now?
Yeah,
okay.
I can hear you. I just had to put my mask on. I'm on the bus. I'm almost home. But anyways, the info session would be like when we had the small breakout groups, you know, where people came and we asked questions, we got input. That was awesome. That was amazing. I like the way that worked. So I just don't like the way town halls represent one concept, but then when you go there, you don't get it. You just have to. So
yeah,
town hall is an educational environment, and
okay, we're kind of losing you going in and out, so maybe we could wait till when you arrive off the bus. Barb, was that an earlier hand you had up?
Okay. Yeah, I'll wait till I get home.
Okay. Okay, so
I heard both of that. I'm wondering where commissioners come into play into that then, if it's set up with like breakout, is it like a panel initially? I mean, we could table this for a off this conversation, but I'm just trying to get a clear understanding of what you mean. And if it's too, but we can come back to it as well if your bus is not getting the best signal. So
I mean, I guess the thing is the idea of having some kind of session, and we could define what that is and the format at a later point. But I think the idea of thinking about convening people to talk about how the county and the city could work together and provide that information would be helpful. So let's, are there any other thoughts or comments for or against that idea?
I thought I was going to get to say something, even though it was a cold hand.
Go for it.
I think Commissioner Myron, I think Sharon Myron rocks. I think she is one of the people that's out there that's bridging the gap that is happening between the city and the county, between the behavioral health that the county has been in charge of. And you know, public safety, there's the sheriff's department that's in the county, and then there's other things that sit within the city. So I like the idea of having as many people there representing that as possible in whatever format, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Barb, well, Anne, you've got your hand raised. And then
one thing that we talked about with her when we met with her was that report that you talked about earlier, Elliot, that report was developed by the city. Is that correct?
What report are you?
Well, I think it was the city brought together.
The city brought together the information. So the idea about having the town hall was to get everyone together, talking about what is happening and how can they collaborate together. That was one idea that we had about it.
I think this would be great to plug into the lipstick as well. I think someone mentioned that. Sorry, Vadim, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, it does sound like a lipstick thing as well. I'm sure it's kind of discussed there. But what's the link to the community engagement piece with the Portland Police Bureau here?
So the link is that a lot of the things that we've spent a lot of time on, including Portland Street Response and including all the work that the Behavioral Health Subcommittee does, is related to people in mental health crisis and the way they interact with the police. And what we found in investigating that and have been informed by the public is that the county is responsible for a lot of those services. And so right now there's a lack of coordination between, or this is what we're told, there's a lack of coordination between what the city does and what the county does. And we've been focused, because we're a city body, on the city stuff. But really, when we're making these recommendations about Portland Street Response, about BOIC, about all these things, we're leaving out a major piece of this. And so to try to understand what are the pieces, I didn't even know what Project Respond does. And as Sharon Myron was explaining, it does a lot of the similar things to Portland Street Response. So I think just to provide that information.
Elliot, no, that's not correct.
Okay, well, she was saying that. So that's why we need the information.
And I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to understand here. Are we giving a platform to Commissioner Myron to kind of talk about how she thinks about the sharing of resources between the city, or is there some tie-in where a police officer is called to something and instead he calls up the county and has the county do something? Or what's our end result here? What kind of recommendation can we make of here or otherwise to facilitate feedback to the police bureau on how to handle situations better, or theoretically?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're sort of at the stage of just getting the basic information, like knowing apparently this mapping exercise was done to see what resources are out there. And I think this was what Amy was getting at, is providing the information about, like we did with Core Patrol, like these are the kind of things that exist that the police do that are in the community. So it's not about Sharon Myron as much as it is about project sort of work that the county's doing and work that the city's doing, getting that information.
And how they could be better coordinated, and also, right?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we could serve as, I mean, you would think that this would already be done, but apparently it's not. We could convene and help that start that communication, because apparently from what I've been told, that communication does not exist.
And it does tie to PPB as well, I would say, wholly about each of these different bureaus and entities interact with people who are experiencing mental health crises in one way or another. And it's, I think, the lack of coordination that begets a conversation about how do we make them have more coordination. Because the same issue with the gun violence thing, where there should be more efforts with the county and the city coordinated, but there isn't.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of coordination. I'm just wondering why PCCEP would be coordinating this versus LIPSIC versus the county mental health committee versus, you know, any of these other entities that seem to be focused on these issues as opposed to focused on policing issues.
Well, I think it would be great if they did. This is responding to an absence of those bodies doing that, as expressed by Sharon Myron. And I think, you know, in trying to understand how the city could best respond and how the police could best respond to people in mental health crisis, this would help the police understand, us understand what the resources are out there. And I think, you know, the behavioral health unit of the police, the enhanced crisis intervention team, like that would also, you know, be could be a piece of the puzzle to have them there, have LIPSIC there. And it's really about, the city has gone through this exercise in 2019, and then nothing, according to her, was done with it. So it's kind of picking up that and saying, okay, how could we actually, now that we have this information, how could we coordinate? Taji, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I was just going to say in the chat, and just continuing off of that, I personally think we should try to get this handed off to something like LIPSIC. And I know Abby Stamp familiarly, and I definitely think that we could just have a conversation with her office and see if she can, you know, take the lead on this work. Cause I know this is, you know, in her job description, basically, in the sense of coordinating coordinating the county and the city on public safety related efforts. And so we can make sure that she's aware that, I mean, I speak to her, I've spoken previously to her frequently. We don't speak as much now, but can like continue that conversation up, and also don't want to step on the feet of what you're saying, Amy, you were doing. So I don't know if you're in a better position to talk right now, but if you are, I'd love to hear a little more about what you were mentioning.
Yeah, hopefully now you can hear me okay. I'm almost basically what I've learned in the last 30 years is everybody knows how the system works. The problem is the requirements and the laws of governance on how each group is divided in their responsibilities to each other and to the community. And so each of the agencies that you mentioned all know their limitations.
Okay, we lost
already
you at
plugged into mental health. Huh?
We lost you after limitations. So
dang it!
pick up
I hate this. Okay, where was I? Yeah, so basically everybody understands how things work that are involved in these systems. The difficulty lies in the responsibility is actually on the CCOs to provide services. So that's either Cascadia or Central City Concern. They're the two biggest contracts. And the people, the problem with the people is they slip out of authority or authorization to have those services because they're houseless or they're not getting their yearly renewals. It's way deeper than you guys even can imagine why services are so hard to initiate. Usually let me just say, every human being in the city of Portland who's on SSI has OHP. The question is it current? That's the big question. Everybody has access to treatment. Everybody has access to mental health. That's a given. The question is, do they want it? And number two, are they active in DHS? That's the problem nobody can seem to solve, is keeping everybody active in their healthcare access. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. And Amy, now that you're in better connection, could you maybe explain what your info session idea that you were recommending would be?
Yeah, can you still hear me okay? Sometimes I black out in a certain neighborhoods.
No, you're good. Spoke too soon. You blacked out. Yeah, we're not hearing you, Amy. Okay, well, maybe we'll wait for you to get back to it. So I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing one is some kind of info session, and I think, Taji, your suggestion about getting Abby from Lipstick, were you talking about just contacting her and sort of saying they should do this, or
Okay,
having
basically
Okay.
what we don't know is, Elliot, is who are all the social service providers that are new since COVID? There's like 24 people out there that I'm unaware of providing services that I know nothing about.
Okay, so then it's some kind of,
yeah.
right. Okay, so having some kind of information gathering session would, you're saying, would be useful.
Absolutely.
Taji, what was your idea in terms of involvement of Abby?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying we should like literally like ask her, does this work fit under your domain, and would it be something that you would want to take on like as a project, because it seems like it could fit into her wheelhouse, but I don't know, that could be wrong, right? I mean, I could propose, I'm just saying, I think a meeting with her would be good to engage where Lipstick's at right now on their work, and if this is something that would be appropriate for her to bring to the executive committee, or there's also a series of different subcommittees. Probably the executive committee is the one that Mayor Wheeler and other Commissioner Hardesty is involved in, and a lot of other folks. All that to say, I don't know if she'll have that capacity or if that's in her domain. And so just the conversation might allow us to get connected to who it might be better to work around with, because there may be already someone whose job is to coordinate or try to coordinate or wrangle together these different service providers, along with, because I know the county has a much more robust efforts on this behalf than I know the city does, at least. That's the little bit I do know. Anyway, yeah, that was it.
Anne?
Yeah, I agree with that idea, because in thinking about what Vadim said, I agree. I mean, our focus is policing. I do like the focus of collaborating and kind of helping with collaboration, but I know that a lot of us are involved in other projects at this time. So if we could get someone else to maybe carry this forward, that would be great.
Okay, so Taji, are you volunteering to contact Abby, or would you want someone else to do that?
Yeah, I can contact Abby.
Okay, and the other thing is Amy. It sounds like Amy and Barb are already sort of planning something. So maybe after talking to Abby, putting them in touch with Amy and Barb, and so that they could collaborate on that. Now, if you hear back that they're not interested in doing anything, then we could think about maybe the role that PCCEP could play, and maybe it's the behavioral health subcommittee if they want to take that on. That might be appropriate.
So can I speak a minute?
Yes.
So Amy's right about the gaps analysis.
Was that it?
She couldn't come over today and use my internet, so her internet's
But
not
as far
acting
as,
right.
I'm sorry, Amy?
You cut out.
We lost you.
Nobody heard you.
Okay.
We hear you now. Well, spoke too soon again. We cannot hear you, Barb. Maybe you could put it in the chat if you can hear me. Never mind. Okay. So let's go ahead with that. Reach out to Abby Stamp and see if we could pass that off and see if they could follow up on that kind of coordination conversation. Okay, the next item is the PPB after action report. So this is, and the COCL's report on the PPBs after action report. So the settlement subcommittee did have a conversation about the COCO report on the settlement agreement. But one of the things that was not talked about in depth was PBB's after action report. And last month I spoke with Mary Claire, and she said Jamie Resch was really the principal author of that report, but she wasn't available for our meeting last month. And so talked to her about having Jamie come to the full board meeting this month. So Mary Claire I don't know if you've talked to Jamie Resch and whether she's available or not.
I did talk to her. She's on vacation, which is why she wasn't available, but she will be back next week. And if you want to get her talk about her assessment, I'm sure we could accommodate that.
Great. So I think, you know, when we get to the agenda setting part of this, we could figure out, or we could make that one of the agenda items. I don't think we need any more conversation about that unless there are any questions or comments. Okay, so hearing none. The next item is an item which will, I think, require more time, the new member process. Taji, do you want to start us off on this?
Yeah, sorry, I was about to sneeze. Yes, so we had a vote at the last board meeting in, losing my sense of time, May. And at that meeting, we voted on to have Celeste join PCCEP. And with that during that process, we began or adopted a new process for new members. And I will also preface that before developing and agreeing upon the new process, I think it was explicitly said by the co-chairs that we would want there to be a substantial information provided to PCCEP members prior to the PCCEP meeting so that people could have informed decisions about the new members. We were not provided such information at the first meeting. We were provided a smaller summary of the information about the members, which doesn't really allow us to make a very informed decision. And then subsequently to that, at the meeting, the whole new process was no longer requiring members to individually sort of be on a pedestal to discuss their qualification for the to join PCCEP. I'm generally supportive of that idea, and because of the reasons stated by staff, I think it was just clear that we wanted there to be the alternative in place, and that wasn't maybe articulated completely or clearly, and miscommunications, of course, ever present. So I just want to make sure we discuss it now, figure out how we'll move forward with new members that we want to have, and then also begets the conversation about alternates and the new 2 people who weren't voted on still have a role on PCCEP, and discussing that a little bit as well. So maybe beginning with the contention around switching the system is the opening of discussion. And then from there, we can go to what are we going from here? Because I don't want to spend too much time on that issue necessarily, but more just about ensuring we're all clear on the new process, and that it can be a process that's informative to the community and to PCCEP going into a vote. Elliot, did you have the first? Or Annie and Barb, if your hands are still up, go ahead. I don't think they might not be. So go ahead, Elliot.
Yeah, no, I think where we left it at our last conversation about this was that Judith said she would need to sort of revisit this process. So Judith, I don't know if you've had time to sort of think more about the process, but I guess what we're trying to do is, now that we're not under the pressure of like, we need to elect someone, come up with a process that we could get buy-in from the steering committee and then ultimately the whole committee.
Here's my, hi everybody. So yeah, here's a question. This also came up in the meeting with the city attorneys and the mayor's office about the codification. And we talked about researching some of the ways that this is done by other committees. And so I'm kind of wondering if we can choose one place to have the conversation and then, you know, go with that. So we're doing it in with the codification and we're also doing it here. I'm just wondering, we're not under the pressure at the moment.
Yeah, the codification is the codification is the next agenda item. So these two are related, but is what you're saying is you haven't sort of come up with a proposal for a process.
Well, there has been a lot of conversation going on from the mayor's office, from at the codification meeting with staff. I don't have one to present this evening, but I do know that there's, you know, the idea of the committee choosing its own members has raised some concerns and is one that we need to go deeper into. And I don't feel prepared for that conversation tonight because I didn't realize we'd be having that. But I would really like to not lose what Taji was saying about making sure that, you know, the alternates are engaged we have been working on the engagement end of things. So I'm happy to talk about that if people want to shift to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I apologize, Judith. Oh.
That's okay, Taji.
I was just really quickly, Elliot, I was just going to say, keeps getting off, sorry, I think it's delayed. I was really quickly going to just say that I remember you saying that you wanted to have a dedicated space to discuss this. So let's make sure we can get that together and then we'll just make sure that's publicized. I apologize, I do remember that was discussed.
Okay, thanks, Taji. But I would like to say that, you know, it is exciting that, and we checked in today and Theo had made the cover letter for the mayor's office. Asena said that she was going to be sure to make sure that the mayor signed it, you know, to send forward to council for confirmation of Celeste as the new member. We really have invited and want to continue to invite the alternates to be very engaged in this, in the subcommittees. And I'm in the process of starting to set up the training, and you know, we will do a training as we have in the past where we have the city attorney, the DOJ, and the police in the body of Mary Claire and her chosen person to come with her, do a training on sort of history of the settlement, understanding the police bureau, those things. And then we will do a session where we invite the Mental Health Alliance folks and the AMAC to come and talk about the history from their perspective. And then I had just thrown this idea out to Claudia and Theo and wanted to speak to you all about, I'd like to do a third session that involved, you know, PCCEP members. So the subcommittee chairs, some steering committee members who could come and present about the actual work, what that looks like, kind of do a pitch for their subcommittee. And then answer questions about things. Claudia and Theo and I are getting together Friday Claudia has started to outline a new member handbook, which we know has been requested, and we will share that with you for feedback once we have some more meat on those bones. Was there anything else, Theo and Claudia, that we wanted to report about that to the PCCEP?
No, I think that's good. That so far what you've mentioned as far as where we're at with the handbook and moving along with that. So thanks for that, Judith.
And so our PCCEP members, you know, willing to engage in a third training session. I mean, we can do it and just talk about it, but I think it would be much more engaging if some of those of you who already serve would be willing to come in and help us do a training welcome session that would be for everybody.
Sure.
I have, oh yeah, sorry. I had one other thing to throw out. Elliot, can I? Yeah.
The two issues you've outlined. Go ahead.
Sorry, you were going in and out. Just the one other thing was that I would like to propose that we open up and invite, like, not keep the training sessions closed. I think anybody can benefit from hearing about what's, what the settlement agreements are and everything. And then if there are people who might be considering that they might want to put in as interested partners, they could have gone through that training. It's a lot of work to put everybody together to do that. And I think it would be engaging and great for us to let others, especially with Zoom, because it's so easy. It doesn't, it's no extra work for us actually to include others.
So one thought about that is it might make sense to save time or people's time going forward to also record these sessions so that, we could at least have part of it that people could watch a video and then have a question and answer session. But my point was about two things you mentioned, which I think are separate. One is the question of how PCCEP members, what their role in choosing their own members is, by which new members are brought before PCCEP, and expressed in the chat that the public didn't get to see any of the information, and since there were no presentations, we asked the public to comment, but they really had no basis for commenting or asking any questions. And so I think, we don't have to have that conversation here, but that's something which both, as Taji expressed from PCCEP members' point of view, feeling like they didn't have enough time with the information that was distributed, that maybe there wasn't enough information, and also from the public need to devise a process that that accounts for that if we're going to continue to have the public role in this voting process.
I hear that.
So you're recommending we set up a separate sort of work session to deal with this, Judith? Okay.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I should have said that aloud. So can I recap what I think I've heard earlier? Were you going to go on to the second part?
I was going to go on to the codification, which deals with the second part, but okay. If there's anything else on this issue of the selection. Okay. So in terms of the codification, I sent out, PCCEP passed a codification document. We sent it to the city and city attorneys worked on it. They sent it back to just Taji and I think they sent it to the whole steering committee. Taji and I put comments on that document. And then we had a meeting earlier was it today? Or I'm forgetting.
It was last week. It was last week, wasn't it?
Last week, yes. We had a meeting about the codification and we discussed about half of it, and some issues came up where it was clear that PCCEP really needed to have more conversations to clarify what we wanted. So I sent out that document, which is with those editing comments, so that everyone is aware of the kind of conversations and could provide their own feedback on those conversations. But there are several issues that I thought we could discuss today, which the city really would benefit from feedback from PCCEP about. One of which is this question of how many members PCCEP should have. There's been a discussion of increasing membership from 13 to perhaps 15 members, so that's one issue. There is also the question of how PCCEP, what role PCCEP has in choosing its own members. And this is a conversation that Judith was alluding to. And then there are more specific things in terms of the city's responsibilities that we discussed, like the right now suggestion of a 60-day timeline for getting responses back. And one of the points that I made was to convert that into more of a deadline, that there are 60 days to respond to our recommendations, barring any, calamity that happens, which would explain why one would need to blow through that deadline. But I think the two big issues that would help to discuss now are the size of PCCEP, whether we have any recommendations about that, and then the question of how, what role PCCEP has in choosing its own members. So Anne?
Can I add something to that? In that meeting, we discussed in that document that there is a couple of different levels of membership on PCCEP. One is a 1 year, one is a 2 year. And the discussion was, do we need to have a 1 year and a 2 year? I think moving it to just a 2 year, because people will leave if it doesn't fit with their schedule. We've seen that. And then I'm also wondering if this might be a better discussion to have at the full board meeting, so that we'd get input from all the members present. Your thoughts on that?
I definitely think we need to bring this to the full board meeting, but since the codification, the city is sort of involved in this process, I thought that if there was any feedback from this group now, sort of interim feedback, that could be helpful.
For example, like, do we want to raise a 15 member resolution to the PCCEP board and vote on it? Because that is a decision we would have to make, and has been raised by many members. So we just want to make a clear final decision on that, because once we do, then they can make that updated language. But some of these ideas are shopped around ideas and potential ideas, and others are things like how do we ensure we get 60-day responses? And that's a little bit more of I believe 50 members is one of the only and term things that are changing the current structure of the language, in a large sense, we're trying to focus on. So the 50 members, 60 days, term limits. And then I believe we're planning to meet this week or next week again to discuss more of the codification, and then we'll raise it to the full board in June, no matter what. But I think we wanted to try to, like Elliot said, get some ideas now about it.
I think that's tomorrow. Am I right about that? Or Thursday at 11?
Yeah, it's definitely just Thursday.
Wanted to say it's very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, Amy?
Yeah, I didn't know where you had me slotted, Elliot, for talking tonight, but I think this is probably a good point, because my topic is about the stipends. If we're going to bring new members on, I think it's crucial that everybody understand the way we get paid, because many of you may or may not suffer this calamity, but this year, the IRS wanted almost $800 from me for being a what they call a subcontractor for the city. Okay, because the way we're coded in the system, we're independent contractors. Okay, and and others who are very poor, yes, we want, we would love to have the stipend. But if we're going to be charged big tax at the end of the year, I want more money. I want $250 so that other $125 will pay the taxes I have to pay at the end of the year for being a member of PCCEP. Yeah. Okay, I went over this with all of the experts and all of the people involved, and the bottom line is we're subcontractors for the city. So one of my, I know that Lakiana had offered to go to 500, and I thought that was a little bit steep, but 250 would be enough to cover my taxation and everybody else's at the end of the year if we took money every single month for a whole year. So I just want to put that out there so you're all aware that it is a financial hurt for me, because I don't have a wife, I don't have kids, I don't have a way to, subtract a lot of the credits that a lot of you don't have to worry about. So when you're, putting your money down on your tax form. So I would like to recommend that we up the stipend based on the fact the city won't take taxes out of it. They already said. Number two, we have to pay the tax. Well, then give me enough money to pay the tax.
Okay, so I think that's a really good point that we should communicate to the city when we have a new liaison with the mayor's office. I don't think that goes in the codification because the codification is something which sort of will remain permanent, and that number, it might be 250, 120 or 250, but then it'll change. So, but I think that the advocacy or raising that issue of the taxes would be important. Annika is on the call, and maybe do you want to weigh in on this question?
Hi, good evening. If I think right now, where I've seen stipend referred to is primarily in the bylaws, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, and that's not something I would include in terms of details in the PCCEP plan. If it's not already, I don't think it's there. I would just keep it into just how it is in the bylaws.
Right. So two different conversations sort of happening at the same time, I would then say, because we do still want to hear any feedback on the modification, but then this also is another pressing issue which we wanted to raise on the stipends. So let's just stick on the stipends for now. And I would say, in addition to what Amy was saying, I agree, and I especially think it would be impactful to the young people who are on this board. I mean, I've been doing tax since I was 16, so I knew that I was actually didn't even get my form because it went to my old address, but we don't have to talk about that right now. But generally speaking, it's not, people aren't aware of that. And then on top of that, like Judith was saying in the comment, in the chat, so I was going to reach out to Sukri, former director of Civic Life, who's no longer the director, because this was going to be a raised issue in July, the stipend issue, and then figuring out how to make a more universal stipend process. And that is, I'm not sure where that's going to go now without Suk. And so, yeah, Judith is sort of mentioning in the comments what she's been working on there. And yeah, we should discuss. Amy, has anyone said any solutions to this for you now, or are we just trying to work on like a solution for the future?
The solution is I wonderfully got a chance to speak to someone who told me how to reduce the load. So this year I was able to reduce the tax load based on some other things I recalibrated. But the goal of the subject is, here's the subject. The city and the county both treat all volunteers as subcontractors. According to IRS, if they put that money that's set aside for stipends into another category called other, we would not be charged as subcontractors. We could still get taxed on the money, but the city and the county both need to reallocate the tax box that they choose to use, and the W-9 form that we fill out at the beginning needs to be amended. So we don't have to say we're a sole proprietor. There's no box in there for volunteerism. There's no box for anything except, yeah, we're self-employed for the city as contractors. So they need to change the language according to IRS, but so far, nobody wants to do that.
Really quick, Elliot. So, Amy, is the form you got a 1099?
Yes. No, it's the new one. It's a new one.
The 1098.
1099 NEC.
Yeah. I filled that one today, or not today, generally. I don't want to get too much into the tax info session now, but that in the future, this won't be an issue, because they're not giving us $250. I in no way in the world think the city will give us $250 per month. They're going down to $500 a year, which it comes out to. But what's good about $500 a year is that it's under the $600 threshold, which makes it so you have to report that on your taxes and you are considered a contractor. So that creates one solution, but also obviously lowers the amount of money people receive. But that's because we're making it a universal process. Yeah, anyway, so that's all I can say on that issue for now.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah. I want to talk offline.
Or maybe we should have.
Yeah,
maybe we can have a tax consultant come and help us figure out how to deal with our taxes. But let's turn from that conversation back to the codification. So on the 2 points, does anyone have any thoughts of increasing the number of PCCEP members? And then the other point is about the process by which, or the role that PCCEP has in choosing its own members.
Sorry, my original comment was going to be, I'd like to see it go to 15. That way, maybe we can add more alternates, to the roll call. And that way, if people have vacations or time off or can't attend, we'll have a large enough quorum to actually look like a committee. That's all I'm getting at.
Okay, so you vote for 15. Anne?
I'm fine with that. I'm bringing up the 1 year, 2 year, if we could get some clarity, or if anyone would like to weigh in on the terms, I'd be interested in that piece.
Yeah, I agree with you, Anne. I think we get rid of the 1 year term. That's a relic from when the committee was started. I don't think it makes any sense to have 1 year terms. And as you said, people leave whenever they want. So doesn't hold you to the 2 years. I see Barb's hand, and then I don't know if Amy, if that's a new hand.
Okay, quickly. It's very hard for you guys to get the diversity that you seek with only 13 positions. So I don't know if 15 is enough or not. I'm not saying it should be huge, but if you think about the diversity that you want, that might help guide the number.
Yeah, so we had that conversation, and Lockeanna made the point, that will never be a Noah's Ark of having like two of everything. But having 15 rather than 13 definitely increases the possibility for more diversity than we have now.
Yeah. And I'm also a fan of the 15-member person. And I think a 2 year term does make sense. I thought it would be good to keep it 1 year for people who don't want to commit to 2 years. But I think because of the gravity of the work and as we see that it requires a level of engagement, that I think a 2 year term would be much more appropriate. And then the other question about selecting our own members, I wholeheartedly think we should, because that COAB model was when we did not have that ability, and that was a obvious not successful body. And so I think we just need to have the autonomy. And so I don't even actually remember who brought up, beyond Judith, but I know you were relaying information. So if you could maybe share where that issue came up from, beyond, or was it from those conversations about like member processes, right? Was that it?
Yeah, I mean, it represents a lot of issues, I think, in terms of bias, in terms of autonomy, in terms of consistency for the city with boards. I did look into some of PCCEP. It's the only committee that the mayor's office was aware of that, quote, chose their own members. They're actually a community coalition. And I think if you look at the, if you look at their website for PCCEP, which is the Clean Energy Fund, they have a community coalition. There must be at least 150 individuals and organizations. So it represents a very broad community voice. And when there's openings for members, they actually slot into slots that criteria has been developed for. So that is one of the issues.
We wanted to, I think I was a huge fan of developing criteria. And maybe we can have that as an item on the work session.
And again, I think it would be great to have the conversation and where we can really focus on all the pros and cons for lots of different reasons.
Yeah, no, I was just saying we should add that item to that meeting. Okay, yeah, that was my opinion on that matter. But we should maybe save that question of members and just and hopefully, Judith, can we have this meeting in the next 2 weeks?
I don't, we're doing the codification meetings, we're doing the core patrol meetings, we're doing, I think actually if we could have more space to move on this, that would be helpful. I mean, obviously we want to be able to bring it forward to the group and get some resolution for it before we get to bringing new codification things forward. But I just have to say, I mean, for me, that would be an enormous push right now because people are involved on all these other things. And, we don't even know who's going to be our new liaison in the mayor's office at this point. So if we could have a little more time on that, I think that would be helpful.
The only issue I foresee is that codification rests on resolving this issue. So we can't really move forward with codification until we've dealt with this.
Well, can I ask a question about that? And maybe Anika could answer this. I don't know that Barb's asked, Senna is leaving the mayor's office. She's staying with the city. There's not been an announcement yet of where she's going, but Friday's her last day in the mayor's office. I'm wondering whether the issue of how members are chosen has to be in the codification or if that is something that can be put in bylaws or subsequent, documents.
Anika, could you clarify?
Yeah, right now, I would say it's something that for sure would be laid out in the PCCEP plan, and whether or not how the intricacy of the details of how persons are chosen probably doesn't have to be in the codification. I don't think I've seen that in other ways. They kind of lay out a very broad, how many members, what the diversity or of the members, what you're seeking needs to be in. But I would probably wouldn't go into how specifically they're chosen, because I mean, and it's obviously up to all of you, but when you have something in code, when you want to change it, you then have to go before city council and request, and request for, the council, the commissioners to weigh in and resolve that for you.
So Annika, could I ask you to change the PCCEP plan? What is that? How is that done? Is that PCCEP or does that require, who does that?
It's per the settlement agreement, and to revise the PCCEP plan, you must get, first you have to consultation with the Amici, but ultimately Department of Justice needs to approve the revision. And the PPA is consulted, and I believe City Council approves it. So that's why we need to have the core of the issues resolved prior to moving towards codification. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying. So, so we need to resolve this issue before we can get to codification, whether it ends up in the PCCEP plan or ends up in the actual codification, which is why, Judith, I think, we need to prioritize, otherwise the codification won't be able to happen.
Yeah, so I think we need to have that meeting.
Is there something else that could be then, work suspended on it and plus we're doing the webinars. I don't want to forget that.
Well, we're not leading the webinars, thankfully, so we just have to go to them. And so I think it would be appropriate for us to have the meeting on the week of the 14th. It could even be towards the end.
Okay, but I can't do the week of the 14th because I'm only here 3 days that week. And just to say that And I'm still not clear on when the Juneteenth holiday is happening. If that's going to, because Juneteenth is on Saturday, and I don't know if that's going to be on Monday or Friday.
Friday.
Friday. So it's only a 2-day week for me next week. And, you know, we can't, it's not just us. I have to get someone from the mayor's office and more people than that together. So I'll try to set something up for the week after.
Okay. I'm aware of time, so we've got one more brief item and then we have to set the agenda. So the next item, Annika, you could perhaps help with this. As all of you know, we got the FTCR reports, I think it was in February, and I have them, but we were trying to hire a data analyst to actually analyze that data, and there was issues raised by the city attorneys about what kind of confidentiality agreement the data analyst would need to sign before being able to see that. So I've been in communication with Annika about that, and she has committed to getting a draft of that language to see what it all requires. Annika, where are you on that?
Oh, and I should probably tell you, not that it's a big deal, but my name is Anika. You pronounce it Anika.
Anika.
But I like
Yeah,
Annika
sorry.
too. It's fine. Right now, I'm working on revising one of a template that we're working on. So I'm in the process. It's just, and I'm hoping to get that to you by the end of this week.
Great. Okay, thanks. So once we get that, then we could sort of look at it and then try to think about getting a data analyst to look at those.
And this would be like, it's an NDA, like a confidentiality agreement that would go with what it is that the person would be working with, like however you're hiring them. You know what I mean? It would be a confidentiality agreement. Okay.
But they would be able to, I mean, the point of this is that they are able to produce a public report, right? Otherwise,
yeah, I'm
what
not,
is the point?
Presumably, I'm just gathering the information so we can discuss further. I'm just working with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. Just so you know that from our perspective, the goal is to be able to have this information in, without the names and in some redacted form be made available to the public. And so if it's a like NDA, you're not allowed to disclose any of it, then
right. Okay.
No point.
That's helpful.
And also that, yeah, the NDA would allow the contractors to look at the information and then subsequently analyze that data to then create a more receptive, publicly available report on said data, but wouldn't be showing the raw data. So it would be, I think, allowed, but like I said, if you have to check in with your folks and just research a little more on it, that's fine too. Just wanted to make sure you know exactly what we're looking for so you can make sure you get the right info.
Thank you. Super.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, similar to what the DOJ and the COCL, they look at that data, have their analysts look at it, and then produce a report for the public.
And while we're here, Mary Claire, was there any update on the information that the DOJ, well, PCCEP initially, and then DOJ requested around discipline of summer protests officers?
Taji, yes, and I don't know if IPR is still on, but we've had conversations with them. We do have numbers of how many cases have been opened, how many are closed, and how many are still pending. But in terms of, I know that Brian at the last meeting spoke about looking into the possibility of having it on IPR's website or their what do you call that thing?
The dashboard.
Dashboard, thank you. And I don't think that's going to be a feasible option. So it might be just a, you know, a data dump of where we are at this moment, but you know, won't be, it'd have to be updated, on a, say quarterly basis or something, because there are still a number of cases making their way through the system. I don't even think is IPR still here? Available. Is she still here?
I'm not sure.
Oh,
Jared,
so.
I know that you had, Jared, I know that you had indicated a 30-day deadline. Do you know when that deadline is?
I don't. I could find out. I'm not at my computer though, so I don't have easy access to my email, but give me a day and I can find out when that 30-day deadline is.
I'm looking right now, don't worry.
Yeah, just to Mary Claire, if you could be aware of that deadline so we meet it. Okay, so let's.
What is it? Say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, on.
It's not a deadline for. I mean, for PCCEP, you mean? I mean,
what the
request that we get from DOJ is separate and apart from the request. Any request from PCCEP.
Well, we made the request initially, and DOJ sort of corroborated the request and requested information, the same information we wanted. In a timeline of the 19th is when they sent the email, and I believe that 30 days from that is the 18th of June.
Jared, we should probably talk about that then. Information we give.
Yeah, happy to talk about it. Just so Taji and Elliot, like we routinely give extensions of time if necessary. And so, if Mary Claire, you need more time, just let me know. I don't know that it's been discussed one way or another, but happy to talk about it.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jared, and thank you, Mary Claire, for clarity on that. Sorry for the not really off topic, but just on the side topic. Let's try to get Barbara and Amula's hands is still there. If not, we should probably get the agenda for the June meeting together. I have a few items we discussed. One of them is after action report invite from Jeremy Wesch to present on that. And that will be hopefully one of the items if she can make it. And then I think we were going to
Tajay, wait, could you repeat that a little more slowly? I'm doing the notes. So
sure.
After incident report.
Yeah, the after action report. And we wanted to make sure Jamie Resch was invited. And then I don't know if this is on the agenda or it should be, but the annual report for PPP, I think it's going to be at the settlement agreement meeting. And so we wanted to allow them to have that space and then I guess decide if it might need to be raised to the full board. Is that what we said earlier? Or Anne, what are your thoughts?
No, we're going to talk about it at our settlement committee this Thursday. And then we did also want to bring it to the full board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
And
so go ahead.
Sorry, but I had talked to Elliot earlier a couple of weeks ago about this too, and asked that we be able to be on the agenda for the public comment, because then we're going to, after we receive the comments at the end of the month, it's been given to all of you, it's posted on your website. We are hoping that people come prepared to the big meeting, with any comments that they have. And then we get those comments at that time or shortly thereafter, so we can make whatever changes we're able to do this time or take heed of for next time, whatever. And then we will proceed to the next steps, which are obviously, finalizing it, giving it to City Council and having the chief present it to City Council. And then we'll do our, precinct meetings and be done with that particular part of the, our requirements for the settlement agreement. So
Mary Claire, if we have specific comments, would it be appropriate to email you directly, or do you just?
That would be fine. Sure. No, that would be fine.
Okay.
Yep. And as you'll recall, what happens is some of the, you know, we can't redo the whole thing. So, I mean, if you don't like the way it's set out or whatever, I mean, you know, I just need to caution you that what we usually do is if there are things that are minor that can be fixed, then if they're big ticket of how it's set up, like one year you wanted links, so the next year we put in all the links and stuff. So we would do what we can, you know, within reason to amend it. But if it's big ticket items, then that will be saved for next year's report. So that's how we've done it since you guys, you know, began this process, actually since COAB even. So, so that's just so that people's expectations are, you know, the expectations are clear that the whole thing wouldn't be, you know, we don't envision having the time or the resources to redo the entire report if you just didn't, you know, didn't like any of it, but that, you know, we will certainly take all the comments, consider which ones we can implement right now, but if it's a major structural change, it might wait till the next one is issued. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Mary Claire.
The other issue is codification, which it's not clear where we'll be on that, but if we're at a place where we could have that conversation at the full board meeting, that might be another item we would add.
Yeah, I mean,
Amy?
yeah, Amy, go ahead. Sorry, if you have your hand up still. Could be an old hand. Yeah, that is the question of the century right now, Elliot, because we'll have the Thursday meeting, and we'll have the 23rd meeting, and I don't know if we'll have all of the. I think the one issue is we won't know about the membership process, and so we might. Yeah, that's why I was really a big fan, Judith, of trying to do a meeting next week. And I understand if you're limited and stretched in on time. I just wanted to raise that we'll have to. It'll push our codification back another month. Is all I'm saying, because we can't vote on the. I don't know.
I'm sorry, and I do understand it, and I just want to be realistic about what's really available on the staff end of time, and getting everyone else in the room that needs to be there for that.
Well, maybe we could. There's some issues that I think PCCEP members can opine about, of like the number of members.
Yeah.
And these other things. So maybe we could add that as an item if we can't finally decide on it at that meeting. And then Barb asked about Commissioner Sharon in June. I think it was decided that we're going to try to pass this off unless, and if that is not possible, maybe then we could try to have some broader conversation at the June
Yeah,
meeting.
I'll bring it back up. I'll send an email to the whole PCCEP distribution list with what happens or what I hear back from Abby. And if it is that she wants to collaborate, then I will bring it up and we can have it be an item in my head. But I could see that happening. Yeah. So there's still a chance it could happen, Barb, sooner than later. We'll email her this week and see how she is feeling. And then other items for the agenda. The data analysts, will they be done with their report of the Core Patrol work? And does that seem like an appropriate thing to discuss at the meeting? I mean, I'm assuming at that point, maybe we'll even have an update. I will say we didn't get Sam at this meeting, but we did get an email from Sam during the meeting about the topic of basically just saying the same things Theo said about meeting with Sam Adams or Bobby Lee, the chief of staff of the mayor. And and apparently Robert King and DeSena are no longer with the mayor's staff, along with a few other folks. Pretty sure it's probably fine me sharing this since it's going to be public soon, but I think it was also they lost their communications director and their deputy chief.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So yeah.
Robert King is no longer with him either.
Midda is the communications guy who left. And also the oh my gosh, you know, she was the chief of staff for Commissioner Fish. Sonia, who was the deputy chief of staff in the mayor's office, has left.
Wow.
So that's why I do see now the issue with their, but Will, and so he's just said that they're going to circle back with some times, and that is there anyone who would want to be a part of that meeting here? That was one thing you also wanted to see.
Can you say what that meeting's for again, Taji, for the notes? I'm sorry.
Yeah, the mayor's chief of staff and or Sam Adams to discuss the next steps for the corporate patrol. And that they will circle back. He'll circle back with dates when he gets them from the city.
Is Sam Adams still with the mayor's office?
Sam Adams, well, yeah, I'm assuming by the take of this, yeah. Former Mayor Sam Adams, yeah, can't get enough of the city.
I see Amy.
Yeah.
No, that's an old hand and I can't get in to lower it, so just ignore it.
Okay.
I'm good, thanks.
And then Barb, I think I only saw in Sam's email is ask for PCCEP members, but I don't think the point of the meeting is to, you know, make decisions. It's just to discuss where we go from here, and that'll be relayed publicly as soon as we know what will be the next steps. So if we get the meeting next week, then we'll be able to share at the full board where we're going, and that's yeah, that'll be the goal. Yeah, and then was there another question I'm missing? Jared, no, it's not. I don't think I don't think that the focus of the meeting will be on that. I think I now understand the extenuating circumstances of the mayor's office a little bit better than I did before. That may have led to, and also I think Sam was off the whole weekend. Okay, and then so codification. Oh yeah, so we will bring up the 15-member thing though. I think we need to vote on that for sure. Voting on whether or not we should have increased to 15 members. I think we might even want to vote just for, or do we need to? Yeah, we do need to vote probably because it's changing the bylaws from offering a 1-year term to just offering 2-year terms. I can see that being contentious, so that'll probably have to be raised as well. And then I think that would be a full board meeting, honestly, just in that, yeah. And we can go from there.
Yeah, and if there are any updates to the codification document, we'll just send those out because the city is continuing to work on that document. Okay, I think we're done. We're a few minutes over. So thank you all for attending and sticking with us tonight. And we will see you Thursday at the settlement committee.
Take care, everyone. Have a good